But I think in order to be able to really appreciate this fully, it's important to understand what's going on in the brain that underlies these difficulties which I've just been describing. The brain is about 2.5 pounds, about that big. In there, you've got 100 billion neurons. Those are the cells that make up most of the brain tissue. It's hard for most people to imagine a number as big as 100 billion, but here's a way you can do it. Think about pixels on a TV screen. Imagine a 17-inch TV screen or monitor screen for your computer. On that screen, you'd have about 200,000 pixels. Now, imagine if we then went to the Freedom Tower in New York. It's almost 100 floors high. And take 17-inch monitor screens and set them side by side, bottom to top, all the way up one side, all the way around, so this entire building is totally covered with 17-inch TV sets, and turn them all on, and add up all those pixels on all those screens and that entire huge building. You would then have enough pixels, if you added them all together, to show how many neurons one person has in their brain. Now, these neurons, they're very, very tiny. You have to look at them under a microscope. But they come in different sizes and shapes, but they all work on a branches and twigs system, something like this. And if you isolate any one of them, you'd find that there are over 1,000 places where it's connecting and interacting with the ones around it. But the thing that's amazing about it is the whole system works on low voltage electrical impulses, and it is not wired together for anybody. That's true for those with ADHD. It's true for every one of the rest of us. They are not directly connected. Let me show you what it looks like. If you can imagine these tiny, tiny connections that are so small you need a microscope to see them. Look like a couple of mushroom heads butted up against each other. And then there's a space between them which is thinner than a piece of tissue paper. So when there's something that's coming in from the brain, electrical impulses traveling along here, it has to jump this gap like a spark plug. And then there are little receptor buttons on the other side here that it has to connect with. And if it comes in strong enough, it goes on to the next connection and moves on from there to wherever it needs to go. If it doesn't, it just fizzles here. But the other thing we have here is there are little bubbles on the side. This is where they're coming from. This is where the chemicals are manufactured. The brain makes 50 different chemicals to help carry messages back and forth. And there are two of them that control most of the things that I've been describing in ADHD. So what's happening when that electrical impulse comes is it releases microdots of that chemical. That's what crosses the gap and hits these receptors. It works like a spark plug. And then if it hits the right threshold, it moves on. And then on this side, there's some little cells that work like little vacuum cleaners that go and suck back the chemicals and reload the system. Otherwise, it would be just locked open all the time. We think what happens with people who have ADHD is their brains make these chemicals the same way everybody else's brain does, but they simply do not release and reload them effectively. And the other thing we know is that for 8 out of 10 people who have ADHD, if you give them the right amount of the right medicine, the system can work better.